And tonight we have Havard Ellison, also known as Mortiis. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, thank you.
All right. So, I see back in the 90s you were a bass player in the band Emperor. How did you transition from Emperor to Mortiis?
I got fired.
Oh, that'll do it. Well,
the fastest way to become a solo artist is to behave like an asshole. So,
well,
that's kind of how that. No, actually, well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, I did behave like a dick, and I got fired. So, and that was like my third band in a pretty short amount of time. So I was disillusioned with the whole band scenario. So I figured, like, fuck this, I'm just gonna go solo. And by that point, I gotten into a lot of sort of like, sometimes it's known as like krautrock, and other times Berlin School. It's like sort of atmospheric synthesizer, keyboard music from the 70s, the Tangerine Dream and things like that. And I was really inspired by that, but I didn't know how to play music like that, so I just kind of I went down to the store, the music store, bought myself a keyboard, and I started messing around. And of course, it sounded nothing like the bands that I wanted to sound like, because I didn't know what I was doing. And that became Mortiis, and it through the years, it's just kind of become its own genre, and happy accidents, I guess. That's kind of like the way that happened.
yeah, I see. It started out as a solo project to convey a story, and that there's different eras. Like era 1 was like dark dungeon music. Says here that you had a woman, Sarah Jezebel Diva, doing vocals. And
after a few records, she came along for my 5th album, The Stargate. That's when I started working with her, and that was actually during sort of the last moments of what people refer to as dungeon synth. I mean, that's kind of like a new term that's been coined like 2 decades after.
Right.
I have nothing to do with it. I take no responsibility for that term. When I heard it the first time a few years ago, I was like, that's fucking dumb. I thought it sounded really silly. I'm used to it now, so, and it is what it is. But Sarah got involved for the last album of that type of music that I made in 1999. And then she was also on the next album, which was when I had started programming and got more into. I wanted to go back to like heavier things, and I also wanted to keep the sort of electronic elements. So I was getting very fascinated by industrial rock music in the 90s, and so we made The Smell of Rain, and she was also on that record.
I see that you you did the American Devils Be Damned tour with Mushroom Head in 2015.
Yeah, that was way later. I mean, that's a couple of years ago now, and that was towards the end of the industrial era, so to speak.
Right. So like era 2. Well, as far as Wikipedia calls it, electropop. I'm not sure what you would call.
You trust Wikipedia?
Exactly. So
I've been called worse. I mean, I think some British journalists started talking about cyber discos. I mean, it's like the names that fucking people come up with.
Right.
I don't know. It's frustrating. At the end of the day, I hate that the whole pigeonholing. I make music, I make music, and that's a very cliche thing to say to you because I hear people say all the time, I can't be categorized, but there's a truth to it. It's frustrating to be called one thing and you don't feel like, it doesn't feel like it's true.
Right.
Electropop, I mean, what is that?
Exactly.
I didn't know I made that, but yeah.
Yeah,
it's like Dungeon. It's like Dungeon Zip. It's like who came up with it? It's I'm not sure if I'm. It's a weird term.
I know. I wasn't expecting it. That's for sure. Because I saw.
What are you gonna do?
Because it was like, oh yeah, dark ambient, industrial rock, and then they came up with like electropop. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. So it's like. I
always feel like journalists are like 20 years behind, like when they were referring to Mortiis as disco. I remember when I as like electro disco or cyber disco or industrial techno disco, what the fuck ever. When I was coming out with records like The Smell of Rain and The Grudge, and a lot of the journalists were using terms I felt like it was from the late 70s. Did you just fall out of like Club 54, whatever the fuck that place
right, Studio 54, yeah.
Studio 54. I mean, do you have an afro at the moment?
Right.
What's going on?
Yeah.
This felt so dated, but it's like you can't. What are you gonna do? It's this. Let people do whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean.
Live and let live.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's like I personally, some of like my all-time favorite bands are bands that don't really have like one specific genre. Some of the best bands, you don't even know what genre to put them in, and so like when you see like
no, they keep changing. It's like are you gonna put David Bowie in some kind of category? I mean, the guy changed for every album he ever made. It was a different thing,
Right. Well,
good
yeah.
luck with that.
I mean, I know even Metallica, they had like their S&M album came out with the orchestra, and so many people freaked out because like here in America, like if you're a metal band, everyone expects like guitars and drums and stuff, and then when you go a little bit out of that, unfortunately in America, sometimes you lose fans. But when I started, listening past America, some of the European, South American bands and stuff, there's so much room to be creative, and it's not so much about fitting a specific label. And that's one of the reasons I started this show, Metal started out, there was like, maybe thrash and heavy and a couple others, and now there's like hundreds. There's many different types of rock, and then people are like inventing new stuff all the time. Like there's monster rock out now, and that's like
there's what, monster rock?
Monster rock, yeah. It's like a theatrical, like almost like a horror show, but with like it's got like horror music and all sorts of. It's pretty cool. It's really new, but it
sounds like something Gwar did 30 years ago.
Right, and it's funny you said that because when I was talking to them about their music, they were like, "Oh yeah, Gwar is one of our biggest influences." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So,
there you go.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And I saw that like from era, I think that's era 0. You had your Great Deceiver album.
It gets confusing, doesn't it, with the eras?
Yeah,
it was getting stupid. It was getting ridiculous. It was like this lining it up for complete confusion for everyone on the planet except me.
Well, yeah, because I see like you. I was reading about like how Doppelganger was on a movie, and it was on like the trailer or whatever, and I'm like, well, you know, do you,
I didn't even know that it was.
yeah, let me see here which movie that was. Yeah, it says that there was a trailer for a movie, and Doppelganger was the music for the trailer. I think it was called.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what it's called. But yeah, so
is that also Wikipedia?
Yeah, and you know, this happened like last week. You know, Wikipedia was like, oh yeah, this band has like traveled through Europe and played festivals and stuff, and so I started talking about it. He's like, no, we've never played in Europe. So it's like, so, you know, at least I can ask, and you can be like, no, that didn't happen, so I can at least set the record straight and let people know, you know. Because like Americans often don't know what happens, you know, beyond the borders. Like, you know, they don't know who like famous celebrities are in other countries. They don't know like Chancellor Merkel or Justin Trudeau or Ernest Solberg. All these people, you say that name to American, they have no idea who you're talking about. So, wow. Yeah, so it's kind of like, you know, they really like Americans think like the whole entire world is just like America, and they, you know, they don't really realize that once.
You know, I when I've been out in the States traveling, and you know, which has mostly been on account of touring over there. I will say this in favor of Americans. Most of the people that show up, at least for my shows, are fairly enlightened people. I'm happy to say that. You know, that do kind of pay attention to what's happening outside of the American border. So yeah, you know, but I'm sure there's. I remember we were on tour with that's a long time ago. We were one of the bands on the Black is Up to Black with Danzig, you know, and that was before Behemoth exploded. You know, they were on that tour, and Danzig certainly pulls a fair amount of people that don't necessarily appear to be that aware of stuff going on outside, or even kind of care. But that's a whole different thing, I guess, you know. So I've seen it, but when I do my shows, it's, you know, people are pretty on top of things, actually. So thankfully, you know, I'm glad I have that kind of fan.
And that's one reason why I decided to do the show, was because, you know, I started like listening to European bands and like South American bands and other places too. And I'm like, you know, when I talk about these bands that were really popular in other countries and my friends didn't know who they were, I'm like, well, you know what? Why don't I make a show and I show you how great bands outside of America is? That way, you know, I can do all the searching. I can spend hours and hours every week looking for the best bands, and then once a week I can show you, you know, some really cool other music, and you know, and finally, you know, some Americans are really liking it. I even play music with lyrics that aren't even English, and people love it, you know. So fortunately, you know, it's been doing pretty well. So
that's good to hear.
Yeah.
But I mean, half the fun of being into music is actually hunting down and discovering new stuff, or new old stuff that you weren't aware of. Like, you know, I can discover stuff still, you know, just through fucking going on Discogs and looking at the recommendations, you know, and all this, I'll just sort of flip through all that for half an hour, and all of a sudden I'll discover some gem from like 1979 that I had missed and was not aware of the existence of, and you know, that's fun, you know. I love that kind of treasure hunting, and I it's hard for me to understand that people might be too lazy to do that if you're into music, because that's like that's like a ritual to me, you know.
Well, right, yeah.
Digging for gold and finding something in the end, you know. It's that's half the fun.
Well, yeah, and especially like nowadays, you can find just about anything online if you're willing to search. And I mean,
on Wikipedia,
right? So yeah, but yeah, I also think what's cool is, you know, finding those bands from like, you know, a few decades ago that never really made it on like a mainstream level. They were kind of small.
Almost no one made it.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. I mean, almost no one ever made it, and they all faded into obscurity, you know, because they're not like me. They're not. I'm too dumb to quit, you know. I didn't make it. I mean, I'm half known, you know, but I'm not rich or successful, but I'm still doing it. But most other bands kind of go like, okay, this didn't happen, and they split up and they get jobs, and 25 years pass, and then someone like me discovers them, you know.
Yeah,
that's for me. It's fun, but yeah.
Yeah, I've met musicians that were like, you know, rehearsing in a basement, you know, upset that they hadn't signed a contract or anything, and it's like, you've only been playing for a few months, and I don't know, people they get weird thoughts in their heads. They think, oh, you know, we're such a good band, we're going to get signed by a record label and all this stuff.
That's only a small part of it, the talent and you know, the knack for writing songs or whatever. You might have that, but that doesn't mean you're going to get signed. It's got a lot to do with luck.
Right.
And unfortunately, if your band, if you're a bunch of fat fuckers, you may not get signed because people are, you know, really superficial now.
Right.
So you even have to be like, you know, that's why I'm not famous, because I'm not pretty enough, you know. But it's kind of true. Yeah, I mean, I've met people that were in bands that kind of made it later, but they got sacked because they didn't look the part, you know.
Yeah, because
it's brutal.
Nothing wrong with this Norwegian.
I wanna take it all away. I need to really sleep and rain. I want everything you own, just because I'm true. I can never get enough. I need to rape and violate, just to prove that I'm the man. I'm a thing and I want you. I need to rape and kill and stop. I need to desecrate, I need to subdue the air you breathe out in that shit. 'Cause I'm the big and I want you. I'll make you work, I'll make you sweat, just to prove that I'm a man. I'll leave you die so I can live. And if you leave, I'll just back to the wheel of misery. My speech scream at you and yours. I live to beat this dying horse. We set concept, we bet, this set, the sin within, the waste, debased. I built my life out of like a lie. One foot big wave and you wonder why. I'm a big and I want you. I need to rape and kill and stop. I need to desecrate, I need to subdue the air you breathe out in that shit. 'Cause I'm a big and I want you. I'll make you work, I'll make you sweat, just to prove that I'm a man. I'll bleed you dry so I can live. I just like when King and Jim, your voice and body reach the sun. I'll make you work, I'll make you sweat, just to prove that I'm a man. I'll leave you dry so I can live. And if you leave, bring us back to the wheel of misery.
Well, yeah, and I don't think they're really, when they sign people, they're just about making money. It's not about artistic integrity and
Yeah.
all that. And so,
Money's money, man.
Right. Sometimes the best bands, I've gone to like small shows at pubs and bars that were 10 times better than shows I've gone to in arenas, and so whether, I've met bands where they self-release their own albums and you won't even know it and everything. So, but I think what's cool now is, now people can kind of promote themselves, and now people can record themselves, and there's just a lot of equipment for musicians to be able to do a lot of it themselves instead of having to spend all this money paying other people and stuff. And it's still good to have.
That's what I've been doing a lot.
Yeah.
I invested in a lot of equipment, and I still do. And I haven't really been in a big sort of, proper old school Pro Tools, with a big fucking Neve mixing desk and and all the tube techs and you know the $1 million fucking rack of equipment. I haven't been in a studio like that since 2008, perhaps 2009.
Yeah,
You know, well over a decade. I mean, you know, I mean, I would love to do it, but there's not a lot of those left for good reason, because you know people do it themselves, and I think they're slowly going out of business.
right.
You know, except for like the really big ones that get the Green Days and you know the Metallicas and all that stuff. But I think all these sort of mid-sized studios are probably struggling because people do it themselves now.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I know people that will, you know, they take pride, like they get off of work, they go home and they mix and record and you know, it's an art form now, you know. Any everyday person, like,
it's never going to sound as good as in a proper studio because you'll have real engineers, you know.
right.
Bands aren't real engineers. With the rare, you know, sort of band member that actually does have some kind of degree in audio or engineering. I mean, you know, most of us were just kind of like winging it, you know, in Cubase or Logic or Ableton Live or some program like that, you know. So it's not going to sound as good as it would have done in the proper studio, but you know, I mean, $10,000 difference, you know. So
yeah,
it's about the budget, you know, for pretty much everybody.
and it's very time consuming because we have an engineer here at Lightning Bolt Studio, and he spends hours and hours on you know, on music, and you know, he's not really making music himself because there isn't really time to do both, all of that, the engineering and then writing songs, rehearsing, you know. So it's kind of, yeah.
I know. I mean, I bring my laptop to work on music sometimes. If there's a win, I'll sit down with a headset. That's why I never work on stationary Macs anymore. It's all laptops. I can bring it anywhere I want.
Yeah, I know, like...
And if there's an opportunity, I'll sit down and I'll work on it, you know, or some music, and I'll bring that into my studio. It's mobile, you know, it's pretty good.
Right. I mean, it's amazing what you can, you know, accomplish with laptops now. And I mean, you know, so we've gone to like live shows and streamed the whole show from a laptop, and you know, came out sounding just as good as if you would have bought the live album, you know. So, but I mean, maybe not quite as good, but you know,
close.
Right.
Good enough.
Yeah, well, you know, I think that's one thing, like, you know, it's kind of cool because, you know, a lot of people, you know, we love music, and you know, there's just all these opportunities now, like, you know, you can do the radio thing now, the engineering, the recording, you know, there's so much more than just being a musician. And then musicians themselves, they end up nowadays being in 2 or 3 bands themselves. It's like, I can hardly handle...
Yeah, it's the old Swedish syndrome. I don't know if you were around in the early 90s, but all the death metal bands out of Sweden, they all had like 4 bands each, those guys.
Right.
So, you know, it was like 50 people at 200 bands.
Right.
So, but they were all great though, so because those guys all knew how to play.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
If you're professional, it works out pretty good. I just know a lot of people, like, you know, small time musicians, you know, they'll be in like 3 different bands. But they're like, oh yeah, this is my main band, but when I have leftover time, I do these. I'm like, well, you know, it kind of seems weird.
Man's game, though. I mean, when you get older, you don't have free time anymore.
Oh, right, right, yeah.
That's the thing, you know. I mean, I got 2 kids and I got fucking 2 jobs. Plus, I do this Mortiis thing, you know, with every second that I'm not doing something else. I mean, I do this, you know, Mortiis and interviews and music and the web store, and then getting immersed. I do everything on my own, you know. It's pretty much the only way I can actually almost make a living out of it.
Right, definitely.
This kind of one man army.
Definitely, like, merch is like the only way bands make money here right now, especially during lockdown. But then you have to spend all this.
It's pretty bad now. I notice people buy less now. You know, I don't know if that goes for, you know, maybe some bands are noticing like a peak now in sales. I don't know, but from where I'm standing, I kind of feel like people are a little more wary in as far as spending money, which is understandable. I mean, a lot of these guys might be scared that they might not have a job next month because of the virus, kind of that tide, that wave kind of comes and goes.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
there's a lot of uncertainty. So I'm really noticing that too. So it's pretty rough. I mean, I can't wait for this to be over.
Right. I mean, I've seen a lot of local bars and pubs closed, and
Yeah.
and once they open again, we're going to have to find a way for everybody to be able to make it financially so that the fans can go to shows. So that's going to be interesting.
There's going to be an aftermath.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious about, how many businesses are still going to be able to be, stay open, and for how long? How long can they sustain at this point in time?
Right. Yeah.
How long can you survive? I mean, they're about to.
I got you down, I got you good. I killed you dead, I got you right in my head. I'm burning up inside, the demons are back. I'm burning up inside, the demons are back. I am your fire, your every desire. I'm serpentine, I'm your violent dream. I'm burning up inside, the demons are back. I'm burning up inside, the demons are back. I'm burning up inside with this animal's take. All the shit try to hide, arranged with hostility. I'm burning up inside, the demons are back. I'm burning up inside, the demons are back. Don't call me nothing, nothing means nothing to me. Don't call your demons means nothing to me. I walk in darkness, your darkness means nothing to me. Don't call your warning, your bullets, they cannot hurt me.
Shit, my Mac just crashed. Jesus Christ. Fuck it. Hell. Oh, that's not good. I'm just looking at my screen and it just died.
Uh-oh.
Got some kind of Marvel superpower now. I can crash Macs just by looking at him. We're about to our government just like yesterday, I think, just held this big sort of press conference where I think from tomorrow or the next day, I mean, in Oslo and other places in Norway, they're basically going to shut down all the all the bars and the pubs and sort of like the public places, they're going to get shut down again.
Oh,
It's
wow.
not the first time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like the death rattle as the
Yeah.
start for a lot of these businesses. And like I was saying, when this is finally over and the vaccines are finally sort of approved and we can start getting into that, I mean, how many of these businesses will actually be able to reopen?
Right. Yeah, and
They already died.
yeah, and then musicians themselves, have had to work other jobs in order to feed their families. We know lots of musicians that are used to making money playing shows, and they've had to like hastily run out and get any type of work they can. But
Well, I was lucky in that regard. I mean, I already had a job. I work in health services, as a matter of fact. So I'm on the fringes of being in the risk zone at all times. You never know if someone's going to have it.
right, yeah,
But that's beside the point. Actually, I mean, the point was that I always had an income, even though my musical income got pretty much choked. 80% of it just got choked away, by all these restrictions and the bans on touring and all that stuff. I can't do a single live show and so on.
wow, 80%.
So a lot of the
geez.
income is gone, but at least I can still pay bills. So in
Yeah.
a sense, I'm lucky, I guess.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, at least you didn't get evicted from your home and you're on the street, So there are people that definitely
Yeah.
always got it worse.
That
So,
would be horrible.
I gotta wrap it up here. Is there anything else you'd like to say? You can say whatever the hell you want. Anything you want to say to the world?
My Mac is back up.
Awesome.
In case anyone got worried. I got worried for about 30 seconds. Because I'm in my studio right now and I was working on music until about 50 minutes before you called, and so it just died. Fucking, that's weird. It happens. No, I mean, thanks for the interest, I guess. Thanks for listening, that kind of stuff, etc.
Well, thank you.
I'm really horrible at last words.
And thank you so much for being on my show. That was Havard Ellefson, Mortiis.